Okay, good afternoon, everybody. We are very excited to be here with you today virtually. My name is Andrea Mondello. I am the secretary of the LaGrange Library Board of Trustees, and I'll be the moderator for today. We have a great lineup today for you. Hopefully, this will answer many of your questions about what's going on with the library relocation. Again, I want to remind everyone, for those of you who are just arriving, that this presentation is being recorded. So if something happens and your internet drops or something happens during the presentation, you get called away, you are not going to miss the information. The recording will be posted on the library website. And just a reminder to our speakers today, don't forget to unmute yourself when it is your turn to speak. All right, so let's get going. So first off, a huge thank you to the sponsors of this event, Tompkins Mahopac Bank. Uh, um, they obviously were sponsoring us very generously for the public event that we were going to have in person. But with the current situation, obviously that is not happening. But they have still provided very generous support, and we want to thank them very much for being great community partners for the LaGrange Library. If you're having trouble, again, this webinar is being recorded and will be posted on the library's website, so don't panic. Okay, so our agenda today we'll have an introduction by Erin Hawks, the library board president. We'll have a walkthrough of the plans and some Q&A by Paul Mays, who is the principal of Butler Rowland Mays Architects. We're going to talk very briefly about our fundraising status, which is always an important topic, and then we'll close this presentation. So just a few points about how Q&A will work. Your webinar window, it depends on how you've joined this webinar, but your webinar window will either have a big question mark somewhere on the side to allow you to ask questions, or we'll have a section listed as questions that you can kind of expand. It depends on how you join the meeting. If you type a question, don't forget to click send. Just to be clear, everybody is muted except the presenters because we have over 80 people who registered for this webinar. So obviously we can't have everybody unmuted, but you can type questions. Only you and the moderator can see your question. And we will answer a few questions during the Q&A, especially if we see that everybody's asking the same question. But we can't promise to answer every question today. So what we decided to do was to create an FAQ page based on your questions and post that to the library website so everyone can see the answers to the most asked questions. Okay? Great. So without further ado, let me introduce you to our wonderful board president, Erin Hawks.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. This is Erin Hawks, and as Andrea said, I'm the president of the Board of Trustees at the library. I wanted to start by saying that we hope you're all staying safe and well and are taking advantage of all the e-resources that are available from the library. And also to say, please keep checking the website and the Facebook page for more upcoming virtual events. We do have some things that are in the planning stages, so keep an eye out for that. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to join us today to hear about the plans for the library's new location. Obviously, in the current uncertain climate, our original timeline will end up changing a bit, but we are committed to moving ahead, with the relocation process as soon as we are able. Now what I would like to do is turn the program over to Paul Mays and Megan Brennan from Butler Rowland Mays. As we mentioned before, that's the architectural firm that we're working with to create our new space. And Paul, the proverbial floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. I guess it's a digital floor at this point, but we're learning to deal with new things in a way we never thought we would before. The good news is that libraries, of course, are on the front end of that type of thinking in terms of services provided and the way to help a community. Megan and I are library architects. In other words, that's all we work on, not just in New York, but Connecticut, other New England states. And we've actually been working with the LaGrange Library since about 2008. We have some reports going back that far talking about the need for better space, better parking, better access than their current housing at Freedom Executive Park. And we know we've been looking at a number of different sites over the years. We've finally come to a solution that bodes well for the future of the LaGrange Library and library services for the entire community. So that's what we'll be presenting today. It's actually in 2 phases. So you can see that the library is being made
Paul, we don't see, there we go. Now we see your screen. Thank you.
Okay, are we good? So we will be presenting 2 different phases of work to show the library's responsibility for putting together a scope that is reflective of the monies available and realistic budget and time frame. So what I'm attempting to do here, you should have a title screen up now, and now a shot of the building, in fact, we're talking about. This is at 1110 Route 55 at Town Center. This is a property that's owned by some local developers who have been extremely helpful in working with us and the library to develop a plan for a facility that will serve the long-term needs of LaGrange. You'll recognize the building. Again, it's a key component of Town Center, and the Salsa Fresca restaurant is in it. We will be looking at implementation of renovations of the 2nd floor of this building to provide an accessible library for the future of LaGrange. So I'm going to move to a floor plan that shows phase 1 of that work. We've been working, Megan and I, using our library expertise and the professional abilities of the staff and the analyses that have been going on for years by the Board of Trustees to make sure that we're developing a library that's appropriate for LaGrange. Some of you may know our libraries in the area, including Saugerties, Highland, we're Stanford Library in Dutchess County. We're working right now with the Elting Library in New Paltz, the Marlborough Library, and so forth. But every one of those communities is different, and the library and the services they provide should reflect the difference in those communities. The screen you should see now should say phase 1 renovation at the top. This is in fact the entire floor plan of the building that we were just looking at on the 2nd floor. And so what I'll do is walk you through the layout of this space as phase 1 would be implemented. At the bottom of the screen, I believe you should be able to see my cursor moving, is the lobby. So you've come into the building and come up the main ornamental stair that exists or the elevator. It's very important, obviously, that the facility be accessible to all people in the community. From this lobby, there are public restrooms that exist now that we're using obviously as public restrooms for the facility, but there's a key component in library design that we want to make sure you understand here. The door that I'm pointing to right now is the entry door to the library proper. But what you will notice is that these 2 purple spaces, a large conference or Soho room and a community room, are accessible off of the lobby. What this means, of course, is that the library can hold public meetings or allow the spaces to be used in different ways by other institutions and the public, even when the library proper is closed. They still have access to the restrooms and so forth. So there's a meeting room here that shows about 48 seats. So it would legitimately seat 50 up to 60 people with additional chairs along the back wall. and a conference room that would seat 10 to 15. Theoretically, you could simultaneously hold 2 separate meetings of 2 different sizes, all with access to restrooms and the elevator and egress, even when the library is closed. If we came from the lobby and we were visiting the library, we would come through this door and into this initial space, which is a queuing space at the front of the library. You will see ahead and to your right is the circulation desk. This obviously is where we do returns, checkout, patron service, and so forth, but it's supplemented on this side with an info desk. The info desk is a place for reference interviews, information if you're looking for a particular part of the collection, passport applications, signing up for a library card, and just general information so that you're greeted by somebody as you come in the door. It's important to note that in library design, one of the things we focus on is minimizing the number of staff necessary. That's not to say that the staff aren't important. They're worth every penny and more in making sure the library is serving its functions. And we know from interviews and focus groups that the staff at LaGrange Library is very popular with the community. But the reason it's important to make sure that we have things like cross supervision and sight lines from one desk to another is that the staff costs, the salaries, are probably the most expensive part of the library budget. And so this entire design has been considered with the idea of minimizing any new staff. The plans are that this project can be implemented without adding any staff members at all. So although you see a circ desk and a help desk and a children's desk, this is all existing staff. None of that adds to the budget of the project in terms of operation. So we come in, the help info desk is to the left, the circulation desk is to the right. And those of you who know the existing library know that right now staffing areas are crowded behind the circulation desk. Here we're taking advantage of a staff workroom and a director's office and a bookkeeper's office that give each of them enough discretion and privacy to deal with patron issues, the public, private conversations, and so forth, and allow them efficiently to get their work done while providing supervision and support to the staff that are at the circ desk. Of course, one of the things that's very important is intuitive use of the library. So people being able to come in the door and immediately see help, that is the friendly face that we hear about in the interviews, is extremely important. So we have an info desk and the circ desk with an immediate visual as you come in the door. There's a new and popular area for quick browse, the newest releases, and there's a media area as well, which is also typically a quick browse collection. It would be assumed that the media collection is mobile and lower so that sight lines from the circulation desk are not obstructed and go right into the children's collection, meaning staff at the circ desk as well as staff at the children's help desk are both providing supervision in the children's collection area over here to the left. You can see the children's collection area has areas that are designated not just for stacks and seating, but also a cleanup kitchenette, seating and study tables, areas by the windows, a staff area, and a large storage area. Every library needs plenty of storage. One of the key features of this space that we were so entranced by are the number of windows. You see them along the exterior walls here. They are the white rectangles cut out of the gray perimeter. A lot of this second floor space has access to natural light, which makes a huge difference in the perception of the library space, the feeling of openness, and the feeling of general comfort for both patrons who are there briefly or all day, and for staff who obviously spend a lot of time there. As I advance through the adult area, we have set hardwired computers. They are near the circ desk for assistance and printing. We go to a young adult collection, and then the back part of the building, the quieter area for periodicals, adult collections, and you see at each window either a soft seating area, a 2-top study table, or a 4-top collaborative learning table or study table, what my father would have called a newspaper table when I used to go to the library with him as a kid. All of these spaces then make up the new library and represent an increase in space from what exists at Freedom Executive Park. It also substantially increases the number of seating spaces rather than one large consolidated table area into more private areas, which we find is more conducive to the types of services libraries provide. So we have a variety of meeting room sizes available when the library is closed. We have a separate and distinct children's collection area that has acoustic separation and distancing from the quiet areas. And then we've added not just collection into this space, but seating areas as well. This is the phase one renovation, and you'll see these large gray areas on either end of the building that are existing tenant space. But in looking forward into the future, we're planning with the developers who own the building about what sorts of things we'll be able to do with those spaces as and if they become available. The next slide, which I just switched to that you should be seeing, is an axonometric or a bird's eye view of the space we were just talking about. You can see that the tenant spaces are grayed out, the ones that are remaining as a future phase, but the existing library is laid out so that you can see how it is used throughout the space. This is phase two of the library renovation. This takes use of the entire second floor and in fact occupies those tenant spaces which we had set aside in phase one. This can be conducted when the library has the appropriate funds, including grant monies from New York State, which are intended to assist with library construction and renovations, and with the assistance of the Rieger family who own the building, who are encouraging us to look at the best possible library for LaGrange. You can see that we've taken advantage of the things we did in phase one, and in most cases, we make sure that we have not had to change them or make them obsolete. The info desk, the circulation desk, the work areas, all of these remain as they are. We have these restrooms inside, but you can see that the children's room actually grows to occupy this space, and we get a children's program room, meaning children can go right from collection into a craft or story hour room without going through the rest of the library or having to go through and to the big meeting rooms. This is a feature that many parents in particular appreciate, and it keeps the noise levels in the library proper down. It also encourages what we try to accomplish with things like story hours and craft projects. Although they have value in their own right, one of the key components is getting children into the library and accessing the collection. So as much as possible, we want to go from a program room directly into a children's collection area so that they are tying those things together. There's a children's staff area that gets added so that there's additional storage and workspace for program preparation. You can see the collection can get a little bigger and more study areas or play areas as well as we go along. One of the key features as well is a family restroom. This blue restroom here means that from the children's area, a family, particularly with multiple siblings, doesn't have to make a decision about going out and into the public lobby, but can actually take a child into a handicap accessible restroom with changing tables and so forth, and they're not leaving the children's area. The adult collection also expands, and you can see that from the info desk, which we located in phase one, we have sight lines into another adult collection space. This allows us to increase the collection size from what it was in phase one, add a couple more study areas, and in fact, a passport desk or interview area for private interviews, passport applications, and so forth. We've also, this is where the meeting space was, moved that a little further down. We kept the big space open, so we've minimized new construction, but now we have a community room that seats 80 to 100 people, as well as the 12 to 15 person conference room and a quiet study room for 4 to 6 people. These are very popular with tutors, small groups, and so forth. Now, earlier I called the conference room not just a conference room, but we sometimes call it a SOHO. That's an acronym for small office, home office, meaning if people work from home and they don't want to hold a meeting at their kitchen table, they can reserve a table at the library in the conference room or quiet study room and use that to hold a professional meeting. Further, people who telecommute, it's often wired for distance learning and for online presentations, sort of like we're doing today. So there would be a large flat screen against one wall. They can plug in right at the table and hold a meeting with the home office in Peoria or wherever it may be. In addition to that, college students who take online classes can use these technologies and improve their ability to access education at the higher level. And throughout the rest of the day, it still functions as a conference room, a study room, a tutor room. So it's a very flexible space. It reflects the future of library services as we're trying to address them throughout the community. And it gives us lots of options for different types of programs that currently can really not be held in LaGrange because of limitations on the property. In the end, this expansion almost doubles the size of the existing library. Once we're at phase 2, the library is almost twice as big as the facility at Freedom Executive Park. It's jumped from about 5,000 square feet to a little over 9,000 square feet. Phase 1 is a little over 5,000 square feet. This is an axonometric of, or a bird's eye view, again, of that space. You can see we're putting a lot of things in here because the community has them and needs them, but we want to make sure that they're laid out efficiently, intuitively, and that they are in fact reflective of the types of services the community wants and demands. We thought we'd show you some examples from other projects of a few sample things. These are not exact models necessarily of what we are doing in LaGrange, but they'll give you a sense of what we're talking about. The circulation desk I'm showing you here is from a library downstate. In fact, it won the best small town library in America in 2016. This library circ desk, you can see, has accessibility for staff as well as patrons, privacy panels, and you can see that there are staff areas behind it that have privacy from it, but can provide coverage as well. This is a computer area in a library. This is actually in Highland, so right across the river from you folks. This is a building we just completed a year or two ago. And you can see that neat open spaces with plenty of room, not just for the computers themselves, but for access to your materials, your books, your notebooks when you're doing work at a computer. One of the questions that we often get is what the future of hardwired computers are in a library, because a lot of people access the internet through phones and tablets and so forth. And while that's certainly true, one of the things we find when we're doing speaking about library futures is that because people have become so dependent on small screens like their phones and tablets, they actually don't have access at home anymore, in many cases, to something as large as a laptop or a hardwired computer. So when it comes time to doing something like composing a resume or writing an essay or doing larger projects or things that involve significant graphics, it's often true that the library is one of those resources for a computer with the capacity to actually do the types of tasks they're set up to do when they've lost that capacity at home because they rely only on phones and tablets. One of our clients is the Kingston Library, and in fact, the teen space relies on some things we've done there to allow them to edit movies and video clips and so forth, which came directly out of a conversation with a very active teen group about what interested them. They have not only a book discussion group, but a movie discussion group. And so hardwired computers for things like that can be very important. You can imagine it would be difficult on a small screen. This is a children's area. You see the different varieties of seating as an example. So tables at which to read or do projects or do homework for older kids. You can see in the background a stroller parking area under those cubbies. And in fact, in the photo, you see that's actually my mother-in-law and my youngest daughter in what we call a 1.5 chair, a chair that has the capacity for an adult and a child to sit and read together. But the idea here is to create not just a collection and some tables, but a variety of seating. So you see soft seating, hard seating at tables, you see some niches, the types of areas that children typically embrace because they create a sense of privacy and a sense of ownership. This is the children's area at Highland Public Library. And we wanted to show this just to show the way that we can create a gateway, in this case with the 2 trees, because Highland is a heavily occupied by apple orchards and so forth. But that's that gateway between the children's area and the adult area. It separates one from the other. And we have the ability to do that in this scheme as well between the children's area, where I was talking about acoustic sequencing, from the adult area. Things in the children's area tend to be lower, easy sight lines over the top and keeping an eye on everyone who's in there. This is an example of a meeting room. This is actually from the Cairo Public Library up in Greene County, but simple. You see lots of storage built in on the side. That cabinetry means that the Friends of the Library and the local history group, the children's group actually keeps seating pads and puppets and so forth. They all have access and storage right in the space in which they use the large public meeting room. Important to that is the capacity for storage, that all those chairs can be stacked onto dollies and rolled into the storage room in the back. You see the door there. They also have tables that fold and nest and can be moved away. So at any time, with very little effort, that room moves from all chairs to tables and chairs to an empty shell for things like yoga or calisthenics and other activities. This one has a resilient floor in order to be easy to clean when crafts are done. There's nothing worse than glitter glue on a floor. But some libraries actually do carpeted areas with carpet tile. That's something to discuss. You can also see that the room is set up for technology. It has the projector and the slide screen and an AV cabinet all built in. And this one has access to a kitchenette as well, so that we can move for service of the public when they have coffee service or light refreshments at meetings. This is an activity room. I talked about that in phase 2 of the children's library. This one is from Highland again, but you can see here resilient floor, craft tables, lots of storage, lots of cleanup capacity, and even here a projection screen above, because often this will go or transition from presentation to activity to sometimes both. Sometimes the activity is a presentation where children are asked to take their creativity and make things like movies, presentations, and so forth with a green wall and so forth. Here's an example of the Soho or conference room I discussed. This one has lockable storage, meaning that we can actually show off some of the historic ephemera or pieces. We can access them if a docent or library person opens the cabinet, but they're on display as well. They're not hidden away in an archive room. But you can see the flexibility of a space like this. And in fact, here's the digital screen on the one wall that people from this table can simply plug in here, and everything is set up for them to hold their virtual meetings. So that's a quick run through of the library and both of the phases of renovation that we've discussed. Again, phase 1 is a little bit larger than the existing library. The existing library is a little under 5,000 square feet. This phase 1 is a little over 5,000 square feet. And then phase 2 implementation actually brings us up to just about 9,400 square feet. So that gives us a sense of where we are with the project. At the moment, we are still obviously awaiting what will be happening with the crisis facing the state and the nation in order to try to determine things like commencement dates and so forth so that we can move forward. But we do have a contractor on board. Pricing was let to multiple independent contractors in order to make sure that we were getting the best possible price, and we are actually excited to be moving forward as early as we can. So that concludes that piece of the presentation. Let me try to bring up the screen again and turn it back over.
Thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation, Paul. Currently, there are no questions in the question section, but I would like to wait a minute. I'd like you to keep control in case somebody wants to go back to a part of the plans, Paul, if you don't mind. Is there anyone who has a question? If you do, type it in the question box. You can remember only the moderators see your question, so other people will not see it. And of course, you can always. Oh, here we go. We're getting some questions now. Great. So, is there, Paul, a rough time frame when the library hopes to commence phase 2?
Well, we can talk to Erin about that as well. The phase 2 is dependent on a couple of things from my perspective, and then I'll turn it over to Erin. One is that the library needs to make sure that they've secured the funding for phase 2. And we are looking, there's a Division of Library Development grant, which is given every year. The state budget just passed with the capacity for that grant, although at a slightly lower number this year than it was last year. But that is something we'll be looking at. Fundraising is obviously a key component of that as well. So achieving the funds necessary to complete that construction is one thing, and then the availability of the space. Right now there are tenants in those spaces, but the landlords, the owners of the building, have been very good at working with us toward the future and looking at that. Erin, I would defer to you for any further information.
Yeah, I think you've pretty much covered it, Paul. I mean, the big things that are going to be driving what happens with phase 2 is obviously, how quickly we get phase 1 done in the current environment, and then when the 2 spots become available, and also when we have made sure that we have secure funding for that second phase. So we can't give a more specific date because of the issues.
I have a nice question. That was a question from Daniel. Thank you, Daniel. A question from Beth. What about parking? Is there enough parking?
There are over 100 spots at this facility, so it's an increase and an improvement over the Freedom Executive Park location. That was always a comment, again, going back to the 20 noughts, when we began working with the library, was that the existing location was just deficient in parking. So there are over 100 spots. We've actually been working with the code enforcement officer to make improvements even on the outside. Although obviously we're commissioned to do the work on the interior of the building, but the owners of the building are making improvements to the property for handicap spots and sidewalks as well, to make sure it is as accessible as possible, that it not just meets the requirements established by the Americans with Disabilities Act and code requirements, but also goes above and beyond for the library. They've been extremely cooperative.
Great. Susan says, will there still be an outside book drop?
Yes. We in fact have to locate that on the site. That's one of the things we're working out now, the exact location. And interesting, you didn't ask this, but I like to talk apparently. So the interesting thing about exterior book drops is finding a location. It's much like a bank teller spot. You have to be able to access it from the driver's side in a safe way, or get out of the vehicle to go around in case you don't have somebody with you. So these are some of the questions we have to answer as we're looking at spots. One of the others is the mounting height. That is, some people drive SUVs and some people drive Mini Coopers, and you can imagine that the mounting height is something that we also have to be careful about.
Okay, but there will be one, so that's good.
There will be an outdoor drop. Whether it's a drive-up one is the question we
Is
really,
the question.
it's an existing
Okay.
parking lot, so it might have to be a walk-up.
Kathleen has a great question. She says, if there were an emergency like a fire, how would handicapped individuals exit the library?
There are multiple means of egress from that floor, and the elevator lobby outside acts as an area.
Sorry, we lost you there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Um, Often outside elevators, there's an area with a call box to the fire department. So when emergency services arrive, they can call down to say that they are on the second floor. But as with any building with an elevator, the elevator itself goes to emergency service in the case of a fire. One thing we should add is that the building is being supplemented with a sprinkler system, a fire suppression system that it doesn't currently have. That is part of the project and something that the owners are adding to it for fire safety.
We have a couple of people, I think, who probably came in a little late and they were asking what is the location? Can you just give that address again?
The address is 1110 Route 55 at Town Center. If you're familiar with the restaurant Salsa Fresca, that seems to be the key area that everybody recognizes. It's that building. It's across from McDonald's.
Right, yes, thank you. And for those asking, no, the library next to the firehouse then will go away. This is replacing it. The
That's
library is
correct.
moving. Yes. Um, does the selected contractor have experience in this type of work?
Yes, as a matter of fact, the contractor that provided the bid that they accepted is currently working with us at the Brewster Library down in Putnam County, and they were they were involved with the Highland Public Library that we just constructed across the river from you as the construction manager. They've done library work, so we were very happy to see them put in a number and the fact that they were low.
Great, that's great. Let's see. How long will the transfer to the new facility take? So let's just, obviously we don't know when we're going to be able to get started, right? That's out of all our hands. But once we do get started, how long do we anticipate construction will take? And what will happen? Will the old library have to close for a period of time? I think that's an important question.
That's a great question. In our experience, we probably are looking at it depends when we commence and what happens. But 4 to 6 months for the implementation of the renovations. And the reason I have to give a range for that is that we don't know, obviously, when it begins, but when it does begin, has a big effect on how long it takes. If you can imagine, most contractors who do a lot of school work, for example, have to do that over the summer. And so the availability of subcontractors to do work is often limited if the construction is commencing in the summer. So for library work, we often try to make sure we're commencing in the spring or the fall in order to achieve maximum efficiency with the subs that the contractor's working with. So if we said 4 to 6 weeks for the construction work, or I'm sorry, 4 to 6 months for the construction work, that would have to commence obviously after things have cleared up enough that contractors can work on site, and after the landlords have completed the fire protection system. They're doing that. The landlords are doing the sprinkler system. So we need that work done before our contractors can work in the library. We don't know for sure what the availability of materials will be at the end of this because supply chains have been disrupted, but it's an unknown. So if we said 4 to 6 months for construction, there is typically a couple of weeks at least that the library is closed while they transition from one space to another. It's a question not only of moving the collection from one location to the other, but getting all the new data and computers set up and bug-free and running and set up with the library system as well, who have also been extremely helpful in the development of the project. So we have to make sure we're ticking all the boxes, but usually once things commence, I would guess that we're talking 6 to 7 months before they move into the new space.
Right. That's great. Thank you. If you wouldn't mind, we have a question from Dave. Again, I think he probably came in a little late. Can you show the slide of the building and explain how the building is accessed, if you know how it will be accessed for library use?
How the building will be library, okay.
Just show that picture, right? Right.
Sure, we're looking at the picture of the exterior of the building here. This is the structure at 1110 Route 55. In fact, these front doors that are here now remain the front doors for access to the library. You would come into a lobby space on the main level there, and then you would come up the stairs, which are here, or the elevator here that bring you to the upper lobby, which is where you would access the library proper or access the various meeting rooms that are here to the right. And again, this was done in a way to facilitate use of the community room and conference room with restrooms available from the lobby, even when the library itself is closed. But you would come in the main doors, come up the stairs one way or the other, and enter either the library or the meeting spaces or both.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much for explaining that again, because I did see a lot of people who, didn't come in right at the beginning, so
Sure.
they probably missed that, and that's why we're having those questions. So I'm just looking, will we still have copy machines and faxes at the library?
Yes, that's an essential function that libraries provide, as a matter of fact. And if you, the plan that I have up now, which is the phase 1 plan, if you see the small corner where the edge of the children's space is and the computers and technology are here, this is a copier, fax machine, scanner, printer. So it's actually located there and likely would have a small countertop as well for
Mhm.
sorting and collating and supplies and so forth.
Great. So let's make this the last one. Susan has a great question, and maybe this is more an Erin question. Will volunteers be needed to move or set up materials, or will the move be purely professional?
That is a great question. We're still kind of discussing how that's going to work when the time comes. It is very likely that at some point in the process, we will need people to, who are interested in volunteering. They may be able to help us out. So, if people are interested in doing that, when it gets closer, we'll put out a call to folks, and anybody who's interested can get in touch with us, to help with that process. That would be great.
Thank you, Erin. And you know what? I lied. I do have one more. We had a couple of questions about when will the phase 2 spaces that the tenants are in now, when will they become available? Of course, we have to have the funds to move into them, obviously, but when would they be potentially available?
Well, initially we were told that they would probably become available by, I believe it was by the spring of 2021. Between now and the spring of 2021, both of them would be coming available. Obviously in the current situation, we don't know what is going on with the plans for the 2 current tenants. So things may change
Right.
slightly. We don't know, but the initial anticipated date was that both of them would be coming available by, I believe, May 1 of 2021.
Thank you so much, and thank you.
May I
Go
add
ahead,
just a quick
please.
note?
Please.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Um, just from the architectural perspective, there is an efficiency of scale given the proximity of that date to this work, that if they can be done as an extension of the existing work, it means the contractor only mobilizing once, not having to redo things, They can keep things on one timeline, one schedule. So there's an efficiency, not just in the time it would take, but in the cost of the additional renovations, and further in the amount of disruption to the library. So you can imagine if phase 2 is into the future, then as it's happening, even though it's in adjacent spaces, you're going to hear construction noise, contractors going up and down stairs and things like that. If it can all be done at once, and that's a function not just of availability, but fundraising, there's certainly an efficiency to that would benefit the library. But we work with many libraries and on many phases sometimes. We certainly recognize that the ideal isn't always the timeline you want, but the one that you have to work with.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you so much. All right, so I'm going to go ahead now and switch back. That's the perfect segue into a little, to talk a little bit about fundraising. And so let me go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go ahead and now I should be now. Oh, somehow I keep doing this. Okay, 1 second, please. We can see AOL, so hold on because we didn't switch from your screen. So we need to somehow this little thing. There we go. I just need to make myself the presenter again. Make presenter, show my screen. Okay, there we go. Now let me just check. Yes, you can see my screen. Good, thank you. All right, so that was really good. That was really informative. I actually learned things. So now let's talk a little bit about our fundraising status. So this is our wonderful director, Mary DeBellis, by the way, holding our thermometer that we are unveiling for the first time today. So obviously I don't need to really belabor the point, but the elephant in the room is that obviously, the economy is suffering and people are suffering. So obviously we are coming into this in a very challenging time. So, we started out with a capital fund that had been funded by previous LaGrange Library boards. And that was an amazing gift because it provided the majority of the money we needed, not all, but the majority of money we needed for phase 1. We did have a few generous individual gifts, and we have hired grant writers. We're in grant application process, and of course, Mary will be in charge of working on the New York State construction grant, but that will probably be for phase 2. So you can see here we've raised almost $750,000. And what this will get us, I mean, we have to just be really frank about this whole thing. This will get us into the building. It will get our construction done and get us in. It probably will not include many of the new furnishings that we really need, that like you saw in the photos. We really need, if you are not affected overly by COVID, and you can help us. I'll talk to you in a minute about how you can help us. But we will get in the space, and we're excited about that. But to do phase 2, obviously, we need to get to that 1.5 million. So you see that we have a long way to go. So, and just to reiterate, these construction costs are not taxpayer funded. We need to raise this money. Other than the New York State grant. So for those not economically or otherwise affected, any gift you can give will help, and you can mail a check or donate online. You can go to the library's website at www.laglib.org, and then you click that PayPal button on the right. Or you can go to GoFundMe. So that is the URL there, GoFundMe/the letter F/LaGrange Library Relocation with dashes. Or You can learn more about our capital campaign at LaGrangeLibraryCampaign.org. So those are ways you can help, and it would be really encouraging to us as the board and to the staff. Obviously, this is nobody's fault, kind of this situation, right? We certainly did not anticipate any of this happening in the middle of our capital campaign, but it is where we find ourselves. And like all of our fellow libraries in the Mid-Hudson system, we are resilient and resourceful, and we will make a way, and we hope that you will help us to do that. So before I leave, I just want to remind you, libraries keep the lamp burning brightly. And for those of you who haven't heard this little story, I'll just take 1 minute and tell it to you in an abbreviated version. So many people may not know that the road that's near Arlington High School, that's called Dr. Fink Road, I always assumed it was named after like an administrator of the school or a principal, a teacher, but that's actually not true. It's named after someone who was a medical doctor, Austin T. Fink. And he he was a resident of what was then called Freedom, because our town, of course, was called Freedom before it was renamed to LaGrange. And he was both the town public health officer and the postmaster. And he was well known he was known for many things. He made sure that when if people's wells went dry, if there were dry spells, his well never seemed to, and so he shared his water with folks from the town. And because he was a medical doctor, he often had to go out and help people. And so he wasn't there for mail, because the little mail slots where you came and got your mail were right in his home. So he would put up his flagpole to say, yeah, I'm home, you can come get your mail. And the flag was down, you couldn't get your mail. But the thing he was most known for was for leaving a kerosene lamp burning outside his home at night so people could find their way to him if they needed a doctor during the night. And I guess that that spoke to us at the library on the board and the staff of the library, because we really do feel like that is what we do. We want to leave a lamp burning brightly for the next generation, just like the board members and presidents and staff did before us. So we hope that if you're able, you will think about that, and that inspires you. And with that, I think we are done, unless Erin has any closing remarks. Erin?
No, Andrew, no closing remarks other than, again, to say thank you so much for attending and for hearing what we've got going on. And we look forward to hopefully seeing you all again in person very soon.
Thank you all for attending. Bye-bye.